Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to try and cut through some of the buzz around something that's become really, really essential in AI development lately, LangChain.
Right.
If you've been following large language models, LLMs, you almost definitely heard the name. But what is it exactly? Why did it suddenly become so important? And, well, how's it changing the game for building AI applications?
Yeah, good questions.
So our mission here in this deep dive is basically to pull out the key stuff from the articles, the research papers, the expert insights we've looked at, so you can walk away feeling like you really get it.
Hopefully, yeah.
Now, we all know LLMs are incredibly powerful. Think of them maybe like these super knowledgeable librarians who've read, well, basically every book ever.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And, what's fascinating here is how do you get that super smart librarian to not just answer questions, but to actually do things?
Right, go beyond just recall.
Exactly. Or even, learn new information right now on the fly. And that's where LangChain comes in. It's fundamentally an open source framework. It's designed to help developers build these really sophisticated applications that are powered by LLMs. It streamlines what would otherwise be, frankly, incredibly complex interactions.
Okay, so building on that librarian idea, what does LangChain actually give you? What are the pieces that let the librarian do things?
Good question.
Because when you look under the hood, LangChain seems to provide these modular components, right, and abstractions that make working with models like GPT-4 just simpler.
That's it.
Someone called it Lego for LLM apps, which I thought was, well, pretty perfect.
Right.
It gives developers these building blocks, components that can just snap together.
Yeah, snap together.
To create really sophisticated AI tools.
Yeah.
Much, much easier than trying to build everything from absolute scratch.
Definitely.
And it standardizes those common jobs, right? Like formatting prompts, handling conversation memory, pulling in the right data.
Precisely. And if we stretch that AI librarian analogy a bit further, LangChain is like giving that librarian a whole toolkit.
A toolkit? Like what?
Well, maybe a calculator or access to a specific database, maybe an API connection to, say, the internet. And importantly, it teaches them how to follow procedures, workflows using these tools.
Ah, okay. So it's not just the tools, but the instructions too.
Right. And a really key aspect here is that it's agnostic. LangChain has this standard way to connect to tons of different AI models, OpenAI stuff, Google's Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, even local models you might run yourself.
So you're not stuck with one vendor.
Exactly. Huge flexibility. But what really makes it powerful, I think, is how it brings in external data, up-to-date info or very specific knowledge for a certain field.
Yeah.
This is done using something called retrieval augmented generation, or RGRAGE.
RGRAGE. Okay, I've seen that acronym a lot.
Yeah. Think of it like your AI librarian knowing exactly which book and page to grab right now to answer your question accurately.
So how does that work technically, briefly?
Well, essentially, you can think of a semantic vector as like a unique numerical fingerprint for a piece of text. And a vector store is a library full of these fingerprints representing your external data.
Okay.
LangChain takes your question, turns it into its own fingerprint, then searches that library really fast to find the closest matches the most relevant snippets of external info. Then it feeds that specific info, along with your original question, to the LLM.
That's clever. So it gives the LLM context it wouldn't otherwise have.
Precisely.
Which is huge, right? Especially when you consider things like ChatGPT's knowledge being cut off back in September 2021. So LangChain with RJA means it can bypass that. Give the AI current info.
Absolutely. That's a major use case. Imagine asking about, recent Olympic results. A standard model might not know. But with LangChain integrating a live search tool, or maybe Gemini pulling in real-time search data itself, it can answer that. It directly tackles those knowledge cutoffs.
Yeah.
And it also helps reduce those hallucinations, when the LLM just makes stuff up, because it grounds the answer in actual retrieved facts.
Okay, that sounds like it solved a really fundamental problem then. So let's dig into that. What was the pain point? What were developers struggling with before LangChain came along?
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. Before LangChain, honestly, using LLMs in anything complex was just harder than it needed to be.
How so?
Developers were writing tons and tons of what we call boilerplate code. That repetitive standard code you need just to get things working.
Right, the plumbing.
Exactly, the plumbing. They were constantly reinventing the wheel for basic stuff. Constructing prompts correctly, making the API calls, feeding in data, handling the outputs. The tools were all over the place, fragmented. There just wasn't a good high-level way to do it easily.
So everyone was building their own little custom solutions.
Pretty much. And Harrison Chase, the guy who created LangChain, he felt this pain himself. He saw there wasn't this unified framework to connect all the pieces smoothly.
Ah, so it came from direct experience.
Yeah. His motivation was basically to offer a cohesive way to chain together different components for more advanced LLM applications. He said in a keynote, I think it was 2024, our goal is to abstract away the tedious parts so developers can focus on solving real problems.
Makes perfect sense. Get rid of the grunt work.
Exactly. And another big driver, just the insane speed of AI development. New models, new APIs popping up constantly. LangChain kind of emerged as this crucial integration layer.
Ah, like a universal adapter.
Sort of, yeah. It handles compatibility, so developers aren't tied, hard-coded to just one specific model or service. That flexibility became super important.
Okay, that integration piece is clear. But you mentioned chaining things together. What about the need for the AI to make decisions, to choose which tool to use or what step to take next? That sounds like another level of complexity entirely.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
And that's where one of LangChain's really powerful features comes in, agents.
Agents, okay.
Yeah. This addresses the need for, like, an intelligent control layer. An agent can look at a situation, analyze a request, and then dynamically choose the right tool or the next action from a set of options it has available.
So it's not just following a fixed chain, it's reasoning about the steps.
Exactly. It moves beyond just simple Q&A or generation into actual active problem solving. It enables much more ambitious applications.
It's really quite something how fast this all seemed to happen. So, faced with this plumbing problem, Harrison Chase didn't immediately try to build this massive thing, right?
No, not at all. It started surprisingly small back in the latter half of 2022.
Just a side project initially.
Pretty much. The very first version, I think it landed October 2022. It was just a lightweight little helper for prompt templates. Literally just a few lines of code to make formatting prompts easier.
Wow. From that to what it is now.
Exactly. And this is where the story gets really compelling. Within just a few months, Harrison, working with another early key contributor, Ankush Gola, they expanded it like crazy.
So it wasn't a solo effort for long.
No, it grew quickly. By the end of 2022, so just a couple of months later, they had already added support for those RJAG workflows we talked about and a whole agent system.
That's incredibly fast development.
It really was. Then, January 2023, LangChain, the company, was officially incorporated. And by the middle of that year, I mean, it was basically the framework everyone was talking about. Their Discord community exploded over 30,000 members.
Just like that.
Yeah. Its rise just perfectly timed with the whole generative AI explosion, ChatGPT launching late 22. It was truly the right tool at the right time.
Yeah, the timing was impeccable.
And if you compare it to, say, older machine learning frameworks like TensorFlow, which came out in 2015, or PyTorch in 2016, LangChain is the new kid on the block. But it became a game changer almost overnight.
And the ecosystem keeps growing, right? You mentioned LangSmith.
Exactly. Tools like LangSmith for monitoring and debugging, LangGraph for handling really complex cyclical workflows.
Yeah.
It just shows this incredible momentum and community involvement. It's constantly evolving.
Okay, so bring it back to the listener. What does all this actually mean for you if you're thinking about building something with AI? Or maybe you already are.
Right. So what?
Yeah. The first big benefit that jumps out from everything we've discussed is just making development easier and faster.
Right.
LangChain handles so much of that background plumbing, that boilerplate,
Definitely.
which means you can prototype faster. The barrier to entry for building quite sophisticated LLM apps seems much lower.
It really is.
And it does this through these powerful abstractions. I like the analogy of using the symbol in math. You don't write out 3.14159 every single time, do you?
No, definitely not.
It's a shortcut. It represents all that underlying complexity. LangChain's abstractions seem similar. They let developers focus on the actual problem they're trying to solve, not get bogged down in low-level API calls and data handling.
That's a great way to put it. The analogy works well.
But quick question on that. Does all that abstraction sometimes make things harder to debug? Like, if something goes wrong deep inside a chain, is it less transparent?
That's a fair point. And yes, it's a trade-off developers sometimes mention. For very, very simple tasks, maybe just a single call to an LLM LangChain might feel like a bit of overkill.
Right.
And particularly with complex agents, figuring out exactly why an agent chose one tool over another can sometimes require a bit more digging. That's actually a big reason why tools like LangSmith were developed, to add that visibility, that traceability for these complex chains.
Okay, so there are tools emerging to help with that complexity.
Exactly. But generally, the power and speed it unlocks For most non-trivial applications, it really outweighs that initial learning curve or potential debugging hurdle.
Got it.
And building on the benefits. A huge one is that integration piece we talked about, connecting LLMs to external data and tools. This is so critical because remember, LLMs on their own have fixed knowledge.
Right, the cutoff date.
Yeah. LangChain lets them talk to databases, search the web, use calculators, call other APIs, all through things called retrievers and tools, often orchestrated by agents.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Imagine an app that lets you ask questions about your company's internal documents. LangChain can handle retrieving the relevant document sections and feeding them to GPT-4. Or an agent that needs to calculate something precise, it can invoke a calculator function instead of trying to guess the math.
Which, as we said, helps with accuracy and avoids hallucinations.
Exactly. It grounds the LLM, another major plus, model and service flexibility. Because LangChain is model agnostic, it has connectors for hundreds of different LLMs and related services.
So no vendor lock-in.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
You can easily swap out GPT-4 for Claude or try a new open source model without rewriting your whole application logic. That's huge.
Definitely. What else?
Memory. Handling conversation history. LangChain provides these memory modules. They're absolutely essential for building chatbots that actually remember what you talked about earlier in the conversation.
Right, so it's not just single Q&A turns. It feels like a real conversation.
Precisely. And then there's the community and the ecosystem itself. It's massive. It's active. You find tons of tutorials, examples, and the LangChain team is constantly improving things.
That support network is valuable.
Immensely.
Yeah.
And finally, maybe less flashy, but really important, is reliability and best practices. LangChain kind of enforces good structure. It helps manage tricky things like token limits.
Yeah, the limits on how much text the model can handle at once.
Right, which affects cost and how much context you can provide. LangChain has utilities to help manage that, split text smartly, etc. It just leads to more robust, consistent apps compared to building everything ad hoc.
So summing it up, it's like a force multiplier.
That's a perfect term for it, a force multiplier. It handles all the logic, memory, and optimization you normally have to build by hand, as one expert put it. It makes AI development feel less like you're wrestling with plumbing.
And more like you're actually designing the intelligent behavior you want.
Exactly. More about the what and less about the how.
Okay, so now that we've really unpacked the what and the why, let's get concrete. Let's dive into the how. What kinds of really cool, intelligent applications are people actually building with LangChain?
Yeah, let's look at some examples.
The first obvious one seems to be intelligent chatbots and virtual assistants, right? But we're talking more advanced than your basic FAQ bot.
Oh, much more. These bots can maintain context over long conversations. Remember, user preferences.
Use those external tools we talked about?
Right. Like a customer support bot that can actually look up your account details in a database or process a return by calling an internal API. Or think about smart Slack or Discord bots that can summarize channels or fetch relevant documents.
Yeah, that moves way beyond simple responses. And another big one seems to be document summarization, especially for really long documents.
Definitely. LangChain has smart ways to handle texts that are way too long for an LLM to process in one go. It can break the document into chunks.
Summarize each chunk.
And then even summarize those summaries using techniques like MapReduce. This is super valuable for, say, analyzing huge financial reports, long academic papers, or even just getting the gist of lengthy meeting transcripts.
That saves an incredible amount of time.
For sure. And building on that idea of working with documents, LangChain is fantastic for knowledge-based question answering, often called retrieval QA.
So asking questions of your own data.
Exactly. Think about building an AI assistant that can answer questions based only on your company's internal documentation, or a customer support system using your product manuals, maybe even a specialized medical information tool.
And this is where RA really shines, isn't it?
Absolutely. This is RA in action.
Yeah.
It takes your question, converts it to that semantic vector, searches your vector store of documents, finds the most relevant snippets, and then feeds only those snippets to the LLM to generate a really targeted, accurate answer based on the provided text.
It's like your AI librarian again, finding the exact right pages instantly.
Precisely. That analogy holds up really well. LangChain is also proving really useful for information extraction and data analysis.
Meaning pulling structured data out of messy, unstructured text.
Exactly. Imagine needing to extract all the key financial numbers from hundreds of earnings reports or pulling out names, dates, and locations from a stream of emails. LangChain can chain together document loaders, text splitters, and specific LLM prompts designed to output structured data, like JSON.
Wow, so it automates turning raw text into something you can actually put in a database or analyze properly.
Yeah, it's incredibly powerful for that.
Okay, that's impressive. But you mentioned earlier the idea of LLMs choosing their own actions, the agents. That seems like the most futuristic application. What are some of the really cool things these agents can do? It almost sounds like giving the AI a mind of its own.
Huh. Well, maybe not quite a mind of its own, but certainly a big leap in autonomy and capability. This really leads us to one of the most exciting areas, these AI agents and tool-using workflows. LangChain's agent framework is what enables this. It lets the LLM dynamically decide which tool to use next to count. Maybe web search, maybe a calculator, maybe a custom API call based on the overall goal it's trying to achieve.
So it's not just following a script, it's making choices.
Right. You can think of the agent like an orchestra conductor, maybe, coordinating all the different parts. The LLM's reasoning, the tools, the data, or maybe like a detective who has a toolbox of different skills and needs to figure out which one to use when to solve the case.
I like the detective analogy. So what kind of cases can these agents solve?
Well, think about complex multi-step tasks. For example, a travel planning agent. You can ask it to find me flights and hotels for a trip to Paris next month under $2,000. The agent might first search flights, then based on the result, search for hotels in the right date range and price bracket, maybe even check reviews.
Wow, okay. That's way beyond a simple search query.
Exactly. Or data research assistants that can be asked to find recent studies on climate change impacts on agriculture in Southeast Asia and summarize the key findings. The agent might use web search, maybe access academic databases via an API, read the papers, extract info, and synthesize a summary.
That sounds incredibly useful.
It is. Other examples. Sophisticated characters, NPCs, in video games that can react more dynamically, agents that analyze customer feedback from multiple sources and identify key themes, even agents that help brainstorm and filter design ideas based on constraints. These things handle tasks that just wouldn't be possible with a standalone LLM.
So the scope is really broad then.
Incredibly broad. We're seeing LangChain used to build advanced content creation tools, highly personalized virtual tutors, sophisticated medical triage bots, even financial advisory tools. Its versatility across different industries is really one of its biggest strengths.
We've definitely covered a lot of ground today on LangChain. It feels like we went from, its basic building blocks and that really interesting origin story.
Yeah, starting so small.
Right. All the way through to the powerful benefits it offers developers and these incredibly diverse, sometimes mind-bending applications.
It's been quite a journey.
It really feels like LangChain is fundamentally making advanced AI development faster, more accessible, more efficient. It truly seems to be that force multiplier for innovation we talked about.
Absolutely. And I think, the final insight maybe is that LangChain isn't just about building today's AI apps faster. It feels like it's quietly laying the groundwork for something bigger.
How do you mean?
Well, it's enabling a new class of AI applications that are dynamic, that are context-aware, that are seamlessly integrated with all sorts of external data and tools. It's pushing beyond what standalone LLMs, those librarians in a box, can do on their own.
So connecting AI more deeply to the real world.
Exactly. And if we connect that to the bigger picture, LangChain isn't just about developer convenience. It seems to be paving the way for a future where AI isn't just this sort of opaque black box spitting out text. Instead, it's becoming a more genuinely intelligent tool-wielding assistant, one that can reason, interact with our complex world, and ultimately become more reliable and deeply integrated into our work and lives. So the final thought maybe for you listening is, what possibilities does that future open up for your own work, or even just your curiosity as you watch these capabilities emerge?